Hey, we're back on the fish house project today. It's a Firebrand 21-foot shell that we plan on finishing out in totality. We have a few upgrades and enhancements to work on today, so if that's something you might be interested in, please check it out. First project, better securing the rear ramp. Without structure on the rear wall, there's only a single 1.5-inch aluminum tube on each side securing it, so it wobbles and leaks. After a little research, I decided to get some aluminum clamps from Amazon. They are simple woodworking bench clamps that consist of an extruded aluminum T-track and accompanying screw-down holding clamps. Links down below. I kick off with cleaning the aluminum with some alcohol and VHB taping the track to the upper door corner to make mounting a little easier. Next, we drill a couple pilot holes in the aluminum frame of the ramp to secure the T-track. Last step to mounting the track is to drive home the sheet metal screws. Now that the track is mounted, we can give it a try. You can see as I tighten the clamp, the door pulls in solid and compresses the outside rubber weather strip to create a watertight seal. It really ties the rigid ramp to the less structural rear wall, making a pretty solid assembly. I then repeat that process on the other side of the ramp, and we can check that project off the list. And speaking of lists, in one of the next episodes, I do plan to share some of the design direction and next steps. I'm also working on modeling the structure in SketchUp to play with layout options. Awning action. As mentioned, I'll use this house year-round, so this is a definitive summer feature. I picked up this awning from RecPro. I'm not affiliated, but I did my research, and their solution was repeatedly recommended as a high-value option. I specifically procured the 19-foot model in a fade gray color scheme. The unit is electrically deployed, but does come with a backup manual crank handle as well. The first step of installation is mounting the awning fabric rail on the side of the house. I do this by first taping the rail up with VHB tape and then coming back and using sheet metal screws as well. We'll speed up the process a little bit here. After the fabric rail is completed, it's time to put up the awning mounting arms. The mounting arms do not line up with the structural aluminum studs in the trailer. Note the two holes in the wall depicting where the bottom of the arm will mount. To accommodate this, I fabricate some aluminum cross members. I happen to have some 1.5-inch stock on hand, so we cut that to length. I then create some mounting brackets for the cross members using 1/8-inch aluminum sheet stock. These brackets will make it easy to screw the cross members to the vertical studs. And I wrap up the brackets by taking off the sharp corners. Installing the cross member starts with my favorite VHB tape to hold it in place. I then pre-drill and mount the brackets with some larger screws. I have 6 total cross members to install to cover all of the awning arm mounting points. This is the lower rear cross member following the same procedure. Next step is to install the arm upper Z bracket into the newly installed cross members. We start by adding some butyl rubber sealant to the back of the bracket. Pre-drill into the cross member and sink the 2 sheet metal screws. Next is to mark the lower arm mounting holes. We do this by 1, leveling the trailer, and 2, leveling the arm on the trailer. I then run the self-drilling screws into the cross member, and finally mount the awning arm to the lower mounting point. I repeat that on the other side, and we're ready for the next step. We then move on to the fabric tube assembly. For the 19-foot model, this tube comes in 3 pieces, connected by slide-in tube connectors and screws. Once the fabric tube is completed, my buddy Levi helps slide the awning fabric onto the tube. The extruded aluminum tube has a channel in which the awning fabric slides right into. Levi, my daughter, and I then slide the other end of the fabric onto the fabric rail we mounted earlier. We then roll the fabric onto the tube, and then we bolt the fabric tube onto the mounting arms using some bolts and nylock nuts. We then need to get the wiring into the house. We start with a step bit to drill a hole to accept the ceiling wire gland we'll use at the entrance. We slowly stepped our way to the right size, making sure not to go over. We then moved on to soldering the wire connections. After soldering, we made sure to cover the joints with glue-lined hermetic heat shrink at each joint and over the entire connection. At that point, we were ready to start to actuate the awning. We also need to adjust the endpoints using some limit screws located in the fabric tube where the electric motor resides. Project done, and time for a milestone beverage in the shade. The last project for this week is framing out the wheel wells inside. We'll be spray foam insulating the house, and the wheel wells need some additional structure as well as a cavity for the spray foam to live. I again use 1.5-inch square aluminum tubing with some 1/8-inch aluminum brackets. I affix each end with sheet metal screws to existing structure. Once completed, I repeat that entire process on the other side. That's it for this week. Much more to come on our quest to achieve a far from completed, but at least a fishable house for this winter. Take care, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.